Although I am disappointed that I am not being able to welcome you in person in the United Arab Emirates, I am pleased that despite the ongoing global challenges on COVID-19, that we can leverage this virtual platform to foster cooperation in the goal of promoting trade and investment within the Indian Ocean region. As you all know, trade and investment facilitation is a key Indian Ocean Rim Association priority and is one that is essential to not only encouraging closer economic and businesses ties between IORA member states, but also building closer political, social, and cultural relations in what is diverse and vibrant region. In making further progress towards achieving IORA's goals and objectives under this pillar, it is essential that we continue to work collaboratively in encouraging sustained growth and balanced development in the Indian Ocean region. In doing so, we should seek new outlets to leverage strengths and overcome weaknesses in our investment, trade, and economic frameworks. We should not allow, as you all know, global challenges to undermine our desire to build an open and liberal trade environment within the Indian Ocean region. It is in this light that the 25th IORBF, in collaboration with the annual investment meeting AIM, is being hosted over the next 3 days under the theme of reimagining economics, the move towards a digital, sustainable, and resilient future. Current challenges only further extend to accentuate the vital need for us all to continue to push forward to developing innovative and sustainable solutions for more resilient and prosperous future, which I hope today the theme will allow us to achieve. I very much look forward to hearing the views of all the delegates and how and as a collective we can overcome the challenges of today in order to grasp the opportunities of tomorrow. I hope that participants will find our session on foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, small and medium-sized enterprises, startup, future cities, and the Belt on the Road initiative not only informative and relevant, but also serve to stimulate open, a frank decision. In concluding my remarks, again, thank you all for participating, and I look forward to engaging with you and drawing upon your diverse experiences to achieve successful, constructive meeting of the IORBF. Thank you very much. Now, and let me say this. I really regret not being able to receive you in the United Arab Emirates, because nowadays, especially this week, is one of the best times as weather is concerned in the UAE. It's very pleasant, but hopefully we will welcome you soon next time, and we are looking forward to do that. Now, please allow me to listen to the recorded remarks of Her Excellency Nomvuyo Nokwe, Dr. Nokwe. I wish we could have had her here in person with us, but due to prior engagement, she could not be with us. So now let's listen to her recording, please.
Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency Humaid bin Salem, Chair of the Business Forum, Ms. Judi Nwokedi, immediate past Chair of the Business Forum, Mr. Brian Clark, and the other past chairs and delegates of the Business Forum, Professor Peter Draper, distinguished delegates and observers. I welcome you to the 25th meeting of the Indian Ocean Rim Business Forum. I am delighted that it's taking place as part of the annual investment meeting and for the first time being held virtual. May I extend a warm welcome, particularly to our new chair, His Excellency Ben Salem. Chair, you have taken over the reins from Ms. Nwokedi, who has done an excellent job over the past 2 years. Judi, my dear friend and sister, you have displayed sterling, passionate, and committed leadership in representing the views of the business to our member states' governments. Through your vast experience and inspiring determination, it has also put the Business Forum on the radar of our dialogue partners and other potential allies. May I use this occasion to thank you. Our expectation is for you to continue remaining a strong and active voice for business and for the women within this forum. Chair, we look forward to your able stewardship of IORA Business Forum. 2020 has been a difficult and very unprecedented year all around the world. International cooperation in the Indian Ocean region has suffered as businesses, governments, and communities as they are currently battling to deal with the immediate and ongoing impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, new forms of cooperation are emerging as we adapt the new reality we find ourselves in. As innovation is remaking the way in which businesses operate across the region, I am reminded of the enormous potential that it still exists across the Indian Ocean and within the IORA member states. The Indian Ocean Rim Association has 22 member states and 10 dialogue partners. Together, these represent 30% of the world's population. The Indian Ocean sees around half of the world's container ships and 2/3 of the world's oil shipments pass through its waters, making it one of the most heavily trafficked sea freight corridors in the world. And our members include some of the fastest growing countries in the world, with young and aspirational populations clamoring for education and jobs. No country understands these opportunities better than the United Arab Emirates, which has prioritized trade and investment facilities during the chairship of IORA. And we are fortunate to be hosted today by one of the UAE's most senior business leader, His Excellency Ben Salem. Chair, delegates, I urge you to energize this business forum with renewed purpose and resources. I encourage you to meet more regularly, taking advantage of the new online tools we all are familiar with. May I urge Your Excellency to debate and contest ideas and put these ideas to governments and other stakeholders in the region. You can define the issues that matter most to business and in the Indian Ocean region, and you can decide how this forum will work best for business. This forum will continue to be supported by a small team at the Secretariat, but more resources are needed for it to reach its potential in the Indian Ocean region. Chair, I am sorry I'm not able to be there in person or to participate with you today, and therefore, but I'm looking forward hearing messages from all speakers, including the UAE, on priorities as chair. Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency Humaid bin Salem, Chair of the Business Forum, Ms. Judi Nokedi, immediate past Chair
Thank you. And on behalf of all of you, let me thank Dr. Nwokedi for her very inspiring remarks, and Her Excellency as a Secretary General, as I think have a lot to give and a lot to offer due to the experience. And we are always at your disposal. I think we should work all as a team, since this is our first get-together, first meeting. We promise you we'll take it from here up. And thank you very much. Now, I think there is a photo, a group photo, if that's true. Is that time for a group photo? Can we proceed now? Are we still? Control, can we proceed now?
Yes, Your Excellency, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. We have a very interesting agenda for the day. I would like to start by thanking all of us, all of you, as participate for your participation with us. We really appreciate it very much, and we're looking forward to make this meeting fruitful. We will start the meeting with our first item. Since the last IORBF meeting was, I would like to invite Ms. Judi Nokedi, Chief Operating Officer of the Tourvest Holding and President of the Black Business Council of South Africa, past IORBF chair, to report on the previous meeting. So please, Ms. Judi, the floor is yours.
Mr. Mark from the IORA Secretariat, can you confirm if Ms. Judi logged in?
Morning, Chair. Morning, Fahad.
Morning, Mark.
She's confirmed yesterday that she would be participating at this time. I can't see her on the list. could I suggest that we move to Mauritius, who can report from the government side on the trade and investment agenda more broadly, while we try and tee Judi up.
Okay. Mr. Chair, Abu Muhammad, إذا
Yes.
نبدأ بالأيضا
Yeah.
الثلاثة.
Okay. Now I would like to invite Mr. Sunil, Boodhoo, Director of International Trade at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade of Mauritius, and Chair of IORA's Working Group on Trade and Investment, to provide his report on Member States' progress in implementing IORA's Trade and Investment Facilitation Agenda. Thank you, Sunil. Mr. Sunil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to thank, in fact, the Business Forum to giving me the opportunity, in fact, to come and report on the progress that you have made so far on the IORA Trade and Investment Agenda. We did have a meeting of the group here in Mauritius earlier this year on at the end of January, and where, in fact, I must report that we have made very tangible progress in advancing the agenda of the association with regard to trade and investment. First and foremost, we had an exchange of views on the possibility to establish a framework on trade and investment within the region. And the work was entrusted to Mauritius to come with a proposal on a possible framework on trade and investment. And we did submit a proposal which was circulated by the Secretariat to all member states. And the intention of the framework is to have an agreement among the IORA member state that would be aimed at eliminating barriers to trade in goods, to trade in services, to barriers to investment, and to promote economic cooperation among the member states. And I must say that the proposal has been well received. So far, some 5-6 member states have already submitted their reaction to the proposal. We have received comments from Australia, from India, from Maldives, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And I understand that the Secretariat now is following up with the other member states. And once we would have received all these comments, these would be consolidated and obviously will be discussed among ourselves on the way forward regarding this proposal. At the meeting in Mauritius, we also discussed how to progress or to make progress on the WTO trade facilitation agreement. As you're aware, there is such an agreement, but unfortunately, not all member states are implementing. And so there is a concept note which has been prepared by the Secretariat and circulated to member states. And member states have been requested to indicate any assistance that they might need for them to be able to implement the WTO trade facilitation agreement. So it has been circulated, and this issue is being closely followed up both by Mauritius and by the Secretariat. And Mauritius has indicated that it is prepared to provide assistance to countries that may be in need in some of the parameters that constitute the WTO trade facilitation agreement. So as I said, we are following up on this one. The next issue, very important, that was discussed relates to the non-tariff barriers. So we know that there are a number of NTBs that hamper the smooth flow of goods among the member states. And it was agreed that we have to set up a platform within the region on which member state could report NTBs that they are facing in the course of trading within the region, and also to to learn lessons from such platforms that already exist in other member states, and not member states, but in other regions. And so that is a concept note which has been proposed already on the development, as I said, of a non-tariff barrier portal. It has been circulated to member states. And so we are waiting the comments of member state on the proposal which has been made. So this is being followed very closely as well. And as I said, this is something which is extremely important. And I think that we really need to muster the necessary effort and the support needed to put in place the non-tariff barrier platform. The other issue that was discussed, and again, which is being followed up, is the population with information of the IORA Trade Repository website. There is a website which has been developed, and there are member states, some member states which have already provided the information required on their trade policies and their trade practices, but not all member states have done so. So we are basically following up to make sure that the website has information on all the member states, and of course that will help facilitate trade and to better understand the existing trade and investment policies existing in the member states. So this is also an important issue, and the Secretariat is following up on this one as well. We have also agreed to see how we can promote trade and investment, because investment and trade promotion is important if you want to increase the flow, both of trade and investment. And to that end, we have agreed that we are going to connect the trade and investment promotion agencies so that they can collaborate among themselves, and then they can also assist member states who are willing to promote the trade and investment. And in that regard, also there is a proposal which has been made, and the Secretariat is following up with regard to this proposal as well. A draft terms of reference has also been prepared to study the investment regimes of the IORA member state, and the terms of reference has been circulated to the member states. And of course, we are waiting the responses and the reaction of member states on the terms of reference. And once we receive all the comments, these would be consolidated. And of course, the study will then be launched on the investment regimes of member states. As also agreed, or as is the practice, so we are proposing to have the next meeting of the Trade and Investment Working Group virtually. We know that it's not possible for us to be able to meet physically, to have it virtually in January of this year, so that we can capture, or we can follow up on the progress that has been made so far, and on some of the action plans that we have agreed to. So hopefully, I mean, the platform or the meeting of the working group will basically help us take the progress which has been made, take it further down the road. We have also agreed to share experiences on existing progress which has been made by member states on the ease of doing business ranking. We know that the World Bank every year they assess member states' progress in ease of doing business. In the region, we have got countries that are performing extremely well. If you take Singapore, for instance, Australia, they perform very well. Mauritius is on the 13th position. And I think that we have agreed to exchange experience and even to assist member states if needed to develop the necessary regulatory framework to improve ease of doing business. And so this is being done. It is being led by Mauritius and some other countries like Australia, India, and Singapore. So we are following up very closely on this one. We have also agreed to ensure that the MOU on the small and medium-sized enterprises, there is such an MOU, and it has been obviously circulated to all the member states, but unfortunately not all the member states have signed the MOU. So now we are making sure that all member states do sign so that we can start implementation of the MOU, and also to promote not only SMEs, but basically to promote the trade of SMEs within the region. We have also agreed to step up our collaboration, to step up the collaboration between the government and the private sector. So between the government and the business forum. And I think this is one of the reasons why, as a government representative, so I am basically informing the business forum of the progress. And so we have agreed to explore the possibility of how government and the private sector could work together, for instance, to promote the movement of business people within the region. We have also agreed to see how the different chambers of commerce in the member state could be connected together and how they can work together. So I think that this business and the government working together is something which we also need to take forward, and to see how we can enhance the collaboration. So this is also something that is being pursued by the Secretariat, but also by the member states. And maybe one of the possibilities would be to consider the signing of a memorandum of understanding between government and the different chambers of commerce, or at least we could have an association of the chambers of commerce to see how we could sign a memorandum of understanding to promote collaboration between government and the private sector, as I said. We have also agreed to step up capacity building in a number of areas, and the member states, they have been requested to indicate the areas in which they could provide such capacity building. The Secretariat has circulated to member states, is following up with the member state, and we are expecting that each of them would indicate the areas where we could provide assistance among ourselves and to exchange best practices. We have also agreed to basically to improve the regional connectivity, the maritime connectivity to address bottlenecks that exist in maritime services within the region. And Sri Lanka has agreed to lead on this one. So we are expecting Sri Lanka to come up with proposals so that we can discuss and see how we could further improve maritime connectivity in the region, because without such connectivity, it would be very difficult for us to be able to promote trade. So basically, these were some of the decisions that were taken, and as I said, these decisions are being followed up by the Secretariat, but also by the member states who had volunteered to lead on some of these issues. So this is a very brief report that I just wanted to submit, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sunil, for this very informative. I wouldn't call it brief. I would call it, it's very informative, very detailed. I like the platform initiative, where any state member could present their thought, send their initiatives or any opinion anytime. They don't have to just wait for meetings like this to say their word. Thank you again, Sunil, very much, and looking forward to working with you. Now we will open the floor for discussion. Please share your thoughts with us for a few minutes. So the floor is yours. Any questions, any thought, any sharing? IT? Control. I don't hear anything. Is there anything? Am I missing out something? Or?
Delegates who would like to provide any feedback or comments can unmute their mics. I think, Chair, we don't have any comments from member states and participants. So, Mr. Mark, can we proceed, or is Ms. Judi going to sign in?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Fahad. We are currently tracking down Judi. I believe there's some technical issues and she's not available to present at the moment. So I suggest we proceed, and if time allows and she can connect before the meeting ends, perhaps we could return to Judi's intervention then.
Thank you so much, Mark. Mr. Chair, then we can move to the next item.
Okay. I would like to invite now Professor Peter Draper, the president, to present his report on building trade integration dynamics in the Indian Ocean Rim Association, a technical analysis. So please, Professor Peter.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a pleasure to be given the opportunity to present to this forum some work that we concluded, I think about a year ago now, and has been presented a couple of times. I'd like to acknowledge the support of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for this work. I should say that I'm presenting part of it, not all of it. It's quite a detailed technical study. We'd obviously be happy to share the full report if that would be useful. And basically, I'm going to try and speak for about 15 minutes. What I'll do is a very quick overview of some key highlights pertaining to trade dynamics in, or amongst, I should say, Indian Ocean Rim Association members, and then focus more on the options for enhancing IORA members' trade integration. And as I go, I might reference some of Mr. Boodhoo's update, because I think what he set out there in that very detailed and rich presentation of what the Working Group on Trade and Investment is doing certainly extends some of the ideas that we initially presented. And so that's good to see. And I might comment on a couple of aspects of that. There's a lot of complementarity. So there were three questions really that we were exploring in this study, which I think are highly relevant to the business forum. The first, is it feasible to transform the IORA geographic space into a more dynamic regional production network, like an East Asia, factory Asia, if you like, centered on China currently, but incorporating other countries in East Asia? Where there's a lot of production sharing, regional value chains, goods crossing borders many times, trade and investment linkages that point to high degrees of integration. And you might notice my deliberate use of the term IORA geographic space, and that's because in the report, we look a little bit into whether or not IORA could be considered a region. And we think that, and our data, I think, supports this, it's best considered a geographic space rather than a region per se, and a collection of different sub-regions. And I'll come back to some particular thoughts around that shortly. So the next question then is, if it is feasible, which sectors and which economies could drive that integration process? They have to be leaders, leading sectors, but also leading economies. And then finally, we really posed this question, but we didn't answer it. And that is, what could IORA as a regional institution do to promote a global value chain centric or production network centric agenda? So starting with the trade dynamics and with a caveat, which is that this data analysis was conducted before the onset of COVID-19. And obviously we haven't updated it since then. And COVID-19, as we know, has changed many things. So a few high-level propositions, first of all. It's fairly obvious, and the report sets out some detail around this, that IORA members offer significant medium-term market potential, not just for themselves, but also for dialogue partners and other countries in the world. So what we see is growing consumption potential, and that's linked obviously to market size and certainly prior to COVID-19 economic growth. But at some point, we will presumably get beyond COVID-19 and the underlying drivers of that growth will resume. And those are particularly linked to demographics, economic reforms, and trade and investment footprints that are growing quite rapidly. But of course, there are fairly predictable regional variations. So I referenced some of those sub-regions earlier. And within those regional variations, there are a few key economies that really jump out in the data. And these are particularly in South Asia, India, and Bangladesh. The Southeast Asian IORA members, Australia, developed country, of course, the United Arab Emirates, particularly in the services terrain, and South Africa in the African context, to a much lesser extent, Kenya in East Africa. And so the underlying question, therefore, that we think is highly relevant to this forum is, are these the gateway economies around which a deeper integration process could be built? And I'll come back to that question towards the end. So a few select highlights in terms of the data. Firstly, if we look at this chart as representing intra-IORA trade, again, you see this dominance picture. And so India, given its sheer economic size, does dominate the intra-IORA goods trade story. And then several other economies follow behind that. So the Southeast Asians, as I mentioned, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and then also South Africa, Australia, Kenya comes next in the African stakes, so to speak. If we look at the sectoral profile of goods trade, intra-IORA goods trade, again, we see a pattern of concentration. And it's particularly electrical machinery and fuels that dominate. And if one thinks of the dominant cargo patterns across the Indian Ocean as a whole, it's really the well, primary products, but particularly fuels trade that dominates that. So it's not surprising to find that fuels feature prominently. But below that, in the smaller bars, tailing off quite sharply, there are a range of processed and semi-processed product groups, of which chemicals stands out in particular. And so government officials are particularly interested in these more value-added clusters of products because they offer the opportunity to promote value addition in their economies. And so that could be a basis around which to build a cross-border integration process, anticipating at some point in the future a regional production network. It has to be built around these kinds of value chains. We then also looked at sectoral or services trade in general, in this case, what's on this chart, sectoral services trade. The data for services trade is much more patchy, I would say. It's much more difficult to attribute to countries in particular. But clearly 3 sectors stand out, those being travel, other business services, and transport. So that's an aggregate view across the IORA member states as a whole. What we also picked up, you don't see it on this chart, is that services trade for IORA member states as a whole, if you aggregate it and look at it over a period of time, has been growing quite rapidly too. So there's an interesting services story that is emerging. But when we look at the country patterns again, we find a similar pattern of concentration, with the countries changing order depending on whether they're the major importers or exporters of services. But overall, we find that India, and not surprisingly, but also Singapore as a logistics hub and also a finance hub, dominate the data. But the UAE emerges as an important services trader, and that's obviously largely centered again on logistics, finance, tourism. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same picture as those countries that lead in terms of goods trade. And this just reinforces that gateway story, that pattern of concentration that I was talking about earlier. Not for this report, but in a previous exercise, in fact, for the Durban IORA Business Forum, we presented some thoughts on trade facilitation, so I thought I'd slip those into this presentation as well. And Mr. Boodhoo also referenced the importance of this agenda. I won't go into all the details on this chart, but basically what we find when it comes to trade facilitation performance, and this is taken from a robust data set put together by the OECD, is we find quite a sharp pattern of variation from the very high performers on the left-hand side of the chart, and the obvious high performers, Singapore, Australia, Mauritius, lesser extent South Africa, right down the way down to Yemen, obviously, which has a civil war and a lot of problems, and the Comores. So very uneven performance, and clearly a lot of work to be done, particularly in the least developed and developing countries that are also IORA members. So some summary observations. Overall, what we picked up in the report is that there are some encouraging signs of, at least pre-COVID-19, healthy growth in terms of both goods and services trade. We also did a bit of benchmarking vis-a-vis comparator regions, such as in East Asia, Europe, North America. And we found that overall, IORA members' trade performance lags those of comparator regions, but it's not particularly out of kilter. But when it comes to integration into value chains, global value chains, or GVCs, apart from the Southeast Asian IORA members, which are highly integrated into East Asia, IORA member states as a whole are not particularly well integrated into value chains, and generally at the bottom end of those value chains. So there's clearly a value addition agenda that governments are interested in. It's an obvious point to make, but it comes across very clearly in the data. The dialogue partners loom large in the trade and FDI footprints of all IORA member states, and particularly China, the United States, and Japan. And if we aggregate the European dialogue partners, also Europe, and particularly Western Europe. And then, as pointed out previously, overall, a few states dominate intra-IORA trade and investment flows. So that's the diagnostic part of the report. I'll move quickly through some of the options for enhancing IORA members' trade integration. And what we put forward is a framework for anchoring this strategy. And actually, I think a lot of what Mr. Boodhoo has put forward speaks to this framework, so I won't dwell on it. So firstly, we think it's important to build our regional perspective beyond the security imperatives. So many IORA member states, when their governments look at the Indian Ocean region, they do so through a security lens. Groups like the Business Forum and the Working Group on Trade and Investment are obviously looking to transcend that, and that needs to be built on and amplified by tapping into the growth potentials, particularly, And we think also adopting a variable geometry approach, recognizing that not all member states are likely to move at the same pace or could move at the same pace. That therefore motivates a focus on those gateway economies. The idea being that if these gateways can be linked, they can, well, they are firstly the motors for their regions, but by linking the different regions through these gateways, you bring in the broader set of IORA members. And so that requires building capacity in a range of areas, prioritizing trade facilitation, for instance, looking to support the implementation of the WTO's trade facilitation agreement and their various capacity building funds for this purpose. That's very much a business-focused agenda. But also building capacity in things that connect production chains to each other. And some of these were referenced in Mr. Boodhoo's report, such as maritime integration and looking for the blockages. So what prevents goods from crossing borders, entering markets, perhaps sometimes leaving markets across the IORA region. And then, of course, is it possible to promote bilateral, but also sub-region to sub-region preferential trade agreements as part of an evolving network of trade arrangements amongst IORA member states, and perhaps with, as seems to be underway now, an umbrella agreement to govern and possibly facilitate these interactions. We set out some ideas for further research that could be done to build on these processes. I won't go into all of these details. The first is really to understand the dynamics of some of those key value chains that could be the drivers of cross-border production integration, and starting particularly with electrical machinery, which looms large. And we set out some thoughts for what that research agenda could look like, and some thoughts for how it could be seeded, particularly by approaching the dialogue partners and asking them to fund some of this, because we understand that IORA, the Secretariat particularly, is a resource-constrained organization relative to other comparator organizations. So these kinds of processes do require sustained funding. And then we also suggested activation of a few sustained dialogues, and we thought particularly amongst the investment promotion authorities, because the investment promotion authorities are in the business of bringing multinational corporations to their market to plug into value chains. And so getting them to talk to each other about how they do this, which sectors they're targeting, are there possibilities for doing this on sub-regional basis, or potentially even sharing experiences on an IORA basis. That could be a very interesting set of conversations and seed a range of initiatives. And then finally, we proposed that IORA establish a flagship annual report, which goes somewhat to what Mr. Boodhoo mentioned about the idea of sharing experiences of the ease of doing business report processes. But we think this report would be something a bit more visible out there in the public domain. It should be something that's business friendly. It's certainly not an academic exercise. And it should be highly visible, done on an annual basis, and it should show progress over time with a series of dashboards, heat maps, etc. So it should be targeted at a policy-making audience. And a report like this could provide a useful evidence base for that business-government dialogue, the sustained business-government dialogue that Mr. Boodhoo was speaking about. So that's all, Chair. I'll end on that point. I'm happy to take questions and engage in conversation.
Thank you very much, Professor Peter, for this very well, I think, said, very well put as a report, as information. I couldn't agree with you more than this on that we have so much potential as member states, and we have to unleash this potential. We have to focus on certain sectors to lift up and to embrace this development. I think we have lots of work to do. Thank you very much again. Now we are opening the floor for comments and discussion question and answer. Please, would like to listen to your comments.
Mr. Chair, we have a raised hand from
Okay,
Mr.
please.
Abdul Samad.
So please, you can give them by order. Yeah.
Good afternoon from Bangladesh.
Definitely.
I listened to the deliberations of Professor Peter Draper. Do you hear me, please? Okay.
Yes, we hear you fine.
That is a very, last night I got the paper. That is a very elaborate paper and I need to go through it. It's a very in-depth analysis of the trade and investment and facilities and opportunities that we have among the IORA nations. And I see from Bangladesh that some of the data and charts that have been put here, the smaller nations, smaller economies have less shares in IORA region trade transactions in the business. Somewhere in figure 12, I found that 85% of IORA business dominated by 5 members. So what about your suggestion, Peter Draper? What can we do, like countries like Bangladesh, to uplift our conditions, and your suggestions, please? Thank you. Am I clear to you? Do you have any suggestions with regards to the countries that those are not coming up to the level of the big economies or big traders or investors?
Chair, would you like me to attempt an answer, or do you want to take a few?
Please, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yes, so I think for a country like Bangladesh, which is still in LDC and in the graduation path, it's obviously got a range of challenges that it's dealing with on its own. So its capacity to drive intra-IORA trade in this case is relatively limited. But the kinds of things that it can do on the trade front could include, for instance, initiating, I would suggest on a selective basis, trade discussions with partners that Bangladesh wants to integrate with. That could be in the form of preferential trade agreements, for example, with like-minded partners, and particularly focusing on those gateway economies. I think Bangladesh, like all other IORA member states, already has a network of trade agreements, so these could be thought of as a complement to that process. I think what these trade agreements proffer is a signaling device of intention to business in particular that the government is going to be opening up market opportunities, but is also opening up to business from the other member state. So they're important signaling devices. They also change the incentive structures for business, and they lead to processes of cooperation that should build deeper integration over time. To try and do this on an IORA-wide basis, I think has its appeal, but would be very challenging. I think there's many different member states, many different interests. These kinds of big free trade agreement arrangements require a range of common interests that may not be present in IORA at the current juncture. They may evolve over time, but I suspect they're not there now. Hence, I would advocate a more limited and targeted approach, but possibly within the framework of an umbrella arrangement, as Mr. Boodhoo has suggested.
Thank you, Professor. Is that done? Have you? Professor, is that you finished your answering, or you have something to say more?
I'm done, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. If you allow me, I may just add something for our friend in Bangladesh. I think all the countries here are willing to help each other. If I would like to just mention something as the Chamber of Commerce and the United Arab Emirates, we have associations, we have MOUs, we have collaboration with lots of, for example, the Black Business Council in South Africa, we already have cooperation. In Bangladesh, we have the cooperation with the International Chamber of Commerce. We help and we are willing to help. If there's anything we can do as sharing experiences or helping in any sector, we are more than happy to do that. Thank you. Please, next question. Or IT team, technicals, anything? Nobody said anything. So if there is any a comment or a question or just would like to share thought, please let us hear your voice. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there are no raised hands. I think we can move to the next item.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Now, please allow me to welcome Mr. Abdus Samad from the Ministry of Commerce in Bangladesh. We just were speaking about Bangladesh. That's good. To present his report or his speech. So please, Mr. Abdus, the floor is yours, and it's nice to hear from you.
Honorable Chair, do you hear me, Honorable Chair?
Yes, we hear you fine. Thank you.
That's good.
We hear you fine. We see you fine. You're looking good.
Honorable Chair, do I look good? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, His Excellency Humaid bin Salem, Secretary General of IORA, Nokwe. She's probably absent from this online platform. Fellow colleagues, delegates, and observers from different countries. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning, if as applicable to you. From Bangladesh, I feel very honored today to speak on behalf of our community in Bangladesh, both private and public, on the occasion of 25th meeting of Indian Ocean Rim Business Forum. The title of discussion today is Pathways to Prosperity, Regional Integration, Opportunities for Private Sector. As has been said earlier by many of the participants, discussants, and presenters, that we are passing through a very, very challenging time due to SARS-CoV-2. In the backdrop of such reality, we are talking on trade and investment among IORA regions. First of all, do I share my slides from here, or?
Yes, you can share your slides. If you can share your slides.
I am going to the slides. Is it visible now?
No, we cannot see it. If you can share screen, please.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, and now the slides are loading. Yes, we can see them.
Just a minute. Technical. Is it visible now?
Yes,
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. Okay. So going to the next. Okay. These are the aspects or table of contents on which I would like to discuss today, and would love to hear your comments on these. The subject matters or the points that I would like to furnish here is the regional integration, form and advantages, involvement of private sector in regional integration, current status of internal trade among IORA members that have deliberately and very articulately we heard from Professor Draper. And we'd look to see aspects of regional integration in relation to trade and economic cooperation, the areas and dimensions of economic cooperation, and one of the areas in which we lag much behind is intellectual property right in these regions, and particularly in relation to the countries like ours. And finally, we'd look upon the issues like opportunities for private sector. I have 1 or 2 slides on Bangladesh perspectives, our interest, and way of cooperation with IORA members. And we will also like to say something about the opportunities for the private sector. There are many forms of economic cooperation and investment cooperation, and regional integration has all the more important nowadays because the recent development has surfaced in the area of multilateral trading system. I was asking Professor Draper about this, and he suggested us to go for some preferential trading agreement and free trade agreement. These are the options. And recently, we have come across comprehensive economic partnership agreement. So what are the new business and involvement opportunities for the businesses in this region? We can exchange flow of capital, people, and also ideas. Trade facilitation among countries, this is very important because facilitating trade increases the volume of trade, which has already been spoken of. Ease of doing business, the rankings of World Bank has been discussed earlier. And this sort of cooperation ensures good investment climate, eliminates behind the border, at the border, and across the border constraints to business, and it creates greater opportunity and social development. And we all know many of the poor live in this region, so reduction of poverty may be the ultimate aim of increasing trade and investment in this region. I'd like to see the involvement of private sector in regional integration. Public-private cooperation for attainment of 2030 agenda for sustainable development goals. We are working across the line inside the country with the private sector, and also as the government representative, we are continuous in engagement with private sector. Trade facilitation, market access, product diversification are possible if private sector joins the government. And this should be a paradigm shift. So, private sector should be given more space in policy decisions, because the private sector know where the shoe pinches. Businesses have skin in the game and directly affected and benefited by the integration. So their voice is very important for policy formulation and policy decisions. And before the government, business people connect themselves around the world. So they connect among themselves across the borders, and they innovate business. Therefore, their role is very important. Private sectors are innovative. They have skills, expertise, and solutions. That's why they need to be priority in formulation and planning of actions. This has been shown earlier in a better way. I have 2018 and 27 statistics. In terms of internal trade among the IORA region, we may conclude that we have untapped potentiality, as I was marking in the paper. Professor Chapter elaborately contained these aspects. So we have untapped potentiality, and with the public-private partnership, we can go forward for business and investment development. And what are the aspects of regional integration in relation to trade and economic cooperation, and also investment? The general thrust of integration is openness among the countries in our region, that is liberalization and deregulation and privatization. We get some examples of successful regional integration among the European Union countries. ASEAN is a bit ahead of us. And after, I'm not sure about this. Intra-trade among Asian countries have given very rise to these countries' economic progress, and they are advancing mass. We can also follow the line of ASEAN. So there is a basic difference between the integration among the European Union nations and ASEAN nations. European Union is supranational in nature. They have a total integration. There are benefits, pros and cons in regards to this, but ASEAN sector is highly underpowered compared to European Union. So it is our option. I saw in the first presentation in regards to the updates of the issues that are at our hand. We are advancing in a structured manner, and in future maybe there will be some progress, and we'll choose in between the aspects that we have discussed. So we have here in the next slides the whole range of areas and aspects of cooperation we have chalked out. It is taken from IORA joint working group. And the next 3 or 4 slides, we see what may be the areas of cooperation among the nations or states in the Indian Ocean Rim area. I think cooperation in particular is needed in some of the areas, that is blue ocean economy, blue economy or ocean economy, human resources development, capacity building. Tourism may be one of the main sources, because we are geographically locating in proximity, so we have immense possibility in this regard. Food safety and food security is also very important for us. So IP, we are lagging far behind in terms of intellectual property right. So we must contrive some ideas, generate some ideas how to cooperate among ourselves. Capacity building is one of the most important aspects. Cooperation among the states in the Indian region, Ocean Rim region, may be exchanged for betterment of manpower through training and capacity building. What I mean here is greater cooperation in the area of exchange of trained manpower. This area should be focused upon by Indian Ocean Rim Business Forum, so that we may be benefited out of this by educating and providing training to our manpower. And in particular, what can be the opportunities for private sector? Inter-regional investment can be facilitated and promoted. We do not have much success in service trade, so we can also, alongside trade in goods, go for service trade. We can talk about program, how to develop service trade in this region. And most importantly, as the chair of today's session, Honorable Chair has mentioned earlier, we can exchange experiences among the chambers and government agencies, how to remove the barriers in trade and how to enhance trade. We can also go for technology sharing opportunity, fostering international business environment in this region, taking benefit from the nature and human resources, as I have mentioned earlier, and blue economy, and it has surfaced recently time about green economy in the region, so that we do not face environmental catastrophe. It should be addressed. Let us come to Bangladesh perspective at Bangladesh's expectation from Indian Ocean Rim area. We have good connections. I have shown some of the aspects in which we have communication with our neighboring states and states in the Indian Ocean Rim. Bangladesh has got good connectivity. Our business people is very pro-dynamic, and they connect among themselves in the region. In terms of trade, India, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, these are the sourcing countries from where we import. And we have some neighbors in this region, India, Sri Lanka, and Maldives, South Asian countries, which is situated along the Indian Ocean. And in terms of tourism, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore are our favorite destinations. So we can cooperate in this sector as well. And in terms of labor and manpower, Bangladesh has got a good number of human force and very young nations in the world. Bangladesh offers the service and manpower to Malaysia, in United Arab Emirates and Oman. That's why I earlier told about the capacity building of people through training. If manpower are trained, they can be of good use to the nations and the nations alongside the Indian Ocean Rim. We are the common members of South Asian Free Trade Area and BIMSTEC. So in the last slide conclusion, we have good prospects for cooperation among people and business in terms of trade and investment. Opportunities for the private sector, we can go for inter-regional investment, promote service trade, exchange of experiences, taking benefit from nature and human resources from this region. And this probably I told earlier. And we have got some of the recommendations which IORA Secretariat and the Honorable Chair may take into cognizance. I'd like to propose that a chamber or a B2B connectivity platform may be set up among the chambers of these countries, apart from international chamber. And if you think that international chamber can perform the function, that is up to you, but we would like to have better business-to-business connectivity platform. We have opportunities in the IT sector. Bangladesh has a good brand of 600,000 freelancer IT experts. And this is going to be an next arena of Bangladesh's economic prospects. And we would request the IORA platform to establish a digital platform among the businesses of these countries of the region for exchange of ideas and commodity trading, exchange of human resources, that is that was told earlier, and again a platform for IT freelancers, trade facilitation area. This is an area where we can cooperate in many diversions and in many respects. That is, we need to help each other for WTO trade facilitation agreement implementation. And one more thing is that we need to go for visa simplification for business entrepreneurs and investors. And for Bangladesh in particular, dialogue partners are very important for us, because on one end, we have the number one supply side partner that is importing from where we import is China, and USA and European Union is also our exporting countries. So these are very important. These dialogue partners are very important for us. So that's all, and I am very happy that you gave me patient hearing. So let's get back to Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul Samad. Thank you very much. I think Bangladesh have lots of potential to develop as a country. We also hear that the startup in Bangladesh is one of the best in the region, small businesses, so we can work on that. And before we proceed, and I give my colleagues Handel had to talk about UAE and listen to question. I hear that Her Excellency Judi Nokwe is with us now. So please let me, on behalf of all of you, welcome her and give her the floor. And before that, just to remind you, she's the Chief Operating Officer of Turvest Holding, President of the Black Business Council of South Africa, and past IORBF Chair. So nice to see you, nice to meet you, and please, the floor is yours, Ms. Judi.
Thank you so much indeed, Your Excellency. And I have to say, it's wonderful to be back here with my friends in the IORA family. And it's a wonderful summer's morning in Johannesburg. And I greet you participants, and as well as echoing the current chair's welcome to the 25th meeting of our business forum. And as indicated, my name is Judi, and I am the outgoing chair of IORA Business Forum. And so firstly, on behalf of South Africa's apex business body, the Black Business Council, we would like to thank you all for the support received during our term. And we offer to you, Mr. Humaid bin Salem, the incoming chair, our best wishes. As part of a very special grouping of littoral states and islands hugging the Indian Ocean, we congratulate you as the new chair. It gives me pleasure in particular to meet you, and I am certain that once you have settled into your role, together with Bangladesh, we can establish the troika of chairs as we craft the next chapter in our history in honor of our great president, President Nelson Mandela. So here we are at the IORA Business Forum 2020 meeting. Were we ready for this one? Since we now live in unprecedented times, no one, even the wildest nightmares of any Hollywood-based science fiction screenwriter, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Could have anticipated that 2020 would have started with so much drama and suffering. When we said goodbye in Durban in June 2019, when we last met in Mauritius in January 2020, when we as the women in IORA last met 25 years ago in Beijing, I must say I was rather young then, and I had just returned to South Africa when I joined the South African women's delegation to Beijing. And I'm raising this because I'll revert to this in a moment. And when we were raising our glasses with our families and friends and toasting on New Year's Eve for a happy 2020, we did not realize nor envisage a world today in economic freefall. My sector, tourism, a key sector in South Africa from a jobs perspective, is decimated. Unemployment, especially amongst women, is rising across the world. So the theme of IORA Business Forum 2020, Pathways to Prosperity, as we live in COVID times, poses us with the singular moment in global politics and economics to fundamentally change what we do, how we do what we do, and who we do what we do with, in terms of who we work with. It also provides us, incoming chair, or actually no, you are the chair now, it provides us with an opportunity to apply a gender-sensitive lens in all and everything we do, because women in the Indian Ocean face particular challenges. So to the UAE, what a unique, exciting moment for you for your term as chair. Now, what am I meant to do? I'm meant to review the work that we as South Africa, as the outgoing chair, has done since we last met. Since June to November, when the chairpersonship moved to the UAE, I'm happy to report, together with my ambassador who opened the conference, that the purpose of the Business Forum is absolutely beautifully crafted in the terms of reference, and it is now under your leadership ready for submission to our principals. And our purpose remains to foster business dialogue, action and partnerships that drive inclusive and sustained growth and balanced development in the Indian Ocean Rim region. And the priorities whilst we were chair was really around the strategic conversation as we shaped a true opportunity for businesses in the region. And this is what emerged, and I just want to repeat it again, that business is for business. And when we meet as the Business Forum, we must meet as business people. And that the representation and attendance in the Business Forum must be comprised of business people, men and women. And business communicates with business. And a key point of discussion at all the IORA Business Fora, I believe, is always the challenge of how do we attract the right businesses to the meeting so that we can improve our import and our exports and our direct trade and investments amongst countries. And so key is if we receive our notices in advance, and we can ensure, this will ensure meaningful private sector participation. Of course, an upside of COVID has been that we now engage in virtual settings, and this has enabled tremendous access for people who would not ordinarily be able to attend these meetings, especially those of us and our constituencies in the SMME space. COVID has been wonderful in terms of equalizing the playing field and granting access to so many people. But B2B is has to be a key feature in our work. And this will happen once again, once the borders open. All the other items are very clearly captured in the various reports, which is now ready for you as the chair to take forward. So the performance since our last meeting in Durban, where more than 220 participants, business participants, participated, 20 member states with side events delivered by the International Chamber of Commerce and UN Women, was a tremendous success. We also hosted a briefing by a very prominent integrated business group, the Mitsui Group, in November 2019, and they outlined their program of action to us as the Business Forum. In Pretoria, which is close to where I live, we kicked off with a modality that I think is a good model for IORA Business Forum to continue. We were hosted by Australia as a member state and the Republic of Korea as a dialogue partner to very important discussions at their residencies, where we were able to define how we can work in country, in terms of then out country, with the members within the IORA Business Forum family, in order to build the brand of IORA, to expose the brand of IORA, and then to increase brand equity, and very importantly, to improve communication between the host embassy center and the respective countries, and then of course with the IORA Secretariat. So a very special thank you to Australia and the Republic of Korea for demonstrating leadership and embracing with passion the work of IORA. We kept up close liaison between the private sector and governments via regular teleconferences and meetings, and established excellent working relationships with the working groups. We conveyed private sector. This is a very important, I think, area that we pushed for, and that is when IORA Business Forum meets, whether it's side by side with the CSO or with ministers, that there needs to be an opening session with the business groupings or with government at which IORA sits, and then at a closing session we are able to provide our feedback as the Business Forum. This worked very well with the CSO in Durban, and it did not happen in Abu Dhabi in 2019. And Chair, Your Excellency, under your leadership, we know that this is going to happen moving forward. We have contributed to the Working Group on Trade and Industry Working Plan and have held many, many workshops around trade harmonization and leadership with departmental leads in the Departments of Trade and Industry, and of course, led by the excellent work of Peter Draper. So in conclusion, I would like to challenge the Business Forum on the following two potential game changer areas, and that is the small business sector, SMMEs. We have the MOI. Let's execute against the MOI, because the feature of the IORA block really is the power of our SMMEs and our informal sectors. And this has the potential to be a game changer for IORA. Supply chains can be re-engineered so that we can integrate at the back end the integration of SMMEs. And of course, as a woman from Africa, it would be remiss of me not to grab this opportunity to promote the issue of women, and not to promote the issue of women, but to emphasize that with deliberate actions, we can change the way in which we seek to increase representation of women at all levels of the business community. And so exactly 25 years ago, when the world met in a historic world conference in Beijing to design programs per country for the advancement and equality of women, we have found that the limited gains made 25 years ago are slowly being reversed during the COVID period. So this is a point of pivot for us. We must exploit the opportunity we have now and apply the gender sensitivity lens in everything we do, and have women at the table defining and determining our own destiny. Economic justice for women is a non-negotiable, and the IORA Business Forum must drive this gender agenda as part of generation inequality. So I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone, especially Mark and the SG in Mauritius, and all of the colleagues who work there, and say that if we are to leverage the potential of the dream of President Mandela, then we need additional resources in Mauritius, and we need possibly a person or persons to work in the Secretariat, in Mauritius to drive the agenda of IORA. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank everyone who have supported South Africa, in particular my colleagues in Pretoria, my DIRCO colleagues, and my trade and industry and competition colleagues. I have no doubt that when this crisis is over, and I'm positive it will be over soon, then music, theatre, culture, and the arts in general will help to restore the balance and make us all, we must emerge from this wiser, better human beings, and we will meet in person again. Best wishes once again to the UAE. We are here to support you and serve with you as equal partners side by side. I thank you from a great African city, Johannesburg. Back to you, Your Excellency, the Chair.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I was actually, to let you know, we have signed MOU with the Black Business Council in South Africa. I did myself. I signed the MOU. And a few years back, I was with my family, with my wife in South Africa. It's a beautiful country, one of the most beautiful countries that people have to visit, especially when the weather is good. No doubt that we have to learn from your experience so much, and thank you for working so much and so hard the last few years, that making our next mission easier. We will continue ask for your advice, if you allow us, please, and cooperate to take it to the next level and to have new initiatives and to cooperate with all the member countries. Now I go back. We have listened to the Mr. Abdus Samad spoke about Bangladesh. Now we have our colleague Hinder to speak, to give us a little bit of some information about the United Arab Emirates. Then we'll give the floor for questions for the either about Bangladesh or the United Arab Emirates. So Hind, if you're there, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Excellency Humaid bin Salem. Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished guests. It's a pleasure to be here with you in the annual investment meeting and the IORA meeting. Throughout this presentation, we will cover the brief on the UAE economy, the investment environment, the new FDI law regarding foreign direct investments, and ending it up with the global business ranking. UAE economy. Our economy is diversified, in which 70% of the UAE GDP comes from the non-oil sector and 30% comes from the oil sector. If we will look at the diversified sectors of the economy, as you can see, the wholesaler retail, manufacturing, construction, financial and insurance, transportation and storage, real estate activities, public administration, defense, electricity, gas, information, professional.
I'm so sorry to stop you here. Actually, we are unable to view your presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna share it again. Let me know if you can see it now. Can you see it now?
Now we can see it. Now we can see it.
All right.
Can you just press Control L?
Pardon? Yeah, you want the full view? Sure.
Yeah.
Screen mode. Okay, is that all right?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Perfect. Let's continue. Financial insurance, transportation, real estate activities, public administration, IT and communication, accommodation, and other economic activities. Regarding the percentage of volume of the non-oil trading partners, China is then our #1 non-oil trading partner. Thereafter, India, Saudi, USA, Switzerland, and the other countries. The innovation strategy. Regarding the innovation strategy, there are 7 main sectors: education, health, technology, transport, renewable energy, water, and space. And actually these sectors are the main 7 sectors that we are working to attract also investments from. UAE investment environment. The UAE investment environment is ranked by stability, modern infrastructure, effective economic policy, legislations. UAE enjoys a domestic political stability and healthy international relations with the world. We are strategically located, offering access to regional markets, a free transfer of profit, revenues, and assets, legal and court systems. We have laws to protect capital, the foreign capital investments, such as the intellectual property rights, competition, and the investment laws. And we have the free zone options available. So looking at other benefits, we have low custom tariffs, and we have the low custom tariffs, world-class infrastructure. The UAE has efficient, smart services and global aviation hub and sophisticated lifestyle. Also, we provide the Golden Card permanent residency system, in which the visas are 5 to 10 years and they are renewed automatically. It gives investors this privilege, and there are certain criteria that needs to be fulfilled. We have 78 agreements related to encouragement and protection of investments, and we have 116 agreements on avoidance of double taxation by the end of 2019. The ranking of the FDI inflow, we are ranked 24 globally as an FDI inward ranking by the UNCTAD, and we are ranked 19 in our outflow of foreign investments. Federal Law number 19. The law has been approved end of 2018, and it will enhance the competitiveness of the country, in which it provides 100% ownership in 122 sectors described in the law. And the advantages, according to best international, granted are according to the international best practices, as well as it aids in attracting technology and high value adding sectors to the economy. What are the benefits that really the investor benefit from is treating them as national companies, free transfer of profits from UAE to overseas remittances, confidentiality of information. Any of the rights that will be given to the investor will not be taken unless there is a breach of the law. You can add partners, transfer ownership, and the main sectors, we have 19 in agriculture, 51 in industry, and 52 in the services sector. I'll end up our part with the business ranking. We are looking at the business ranking to know where is UAE standing and how it can improve. We are ranked 16 in ease of doing business, 18 in the economic freedom, and 9 in the competitiveness, and 12 in the digital competitiveness, 25 in the global competitiveness by World Economic Forum, and we are number 1 in sub indicators. And we are 20 in the commodity export, 23 in service export, and 21 service import as per the WTO. By this, I end up my presentation and take up any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Hind. Now we open the floor for comments and questions for Mr. Abdus Samad and for Hind, either for about Bangladesh or about United Arab Emirates. So please, if you have any questions, let us hear it. It doesn't have to be questions. It could be any comments or anything. We have any hands, or we move on to the next session?
Mr. Chair, we don't have any raised hands yet.
I think everybody liked what they heard, so it's good. It's good indication. So now I would like to invite Mr. Brian Clark from Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry to present a new ways for the IORBF to connect private sector and realize its potential as a voice and a tool for businesses in the region. Mr. Clark, I don't know, good morning or good evening, but I think the floor is yours, and very nice to meet you, and glad to listen to you. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellency, and a pleasure to meet you as well. It's just coming to evening in near Canberra, where I am. But what I wanted to discuss with the group, I'm a former chairman during Australia's host time, and thank you very much, Judi, also for your efforts up until this point through the South African chairmanship as well. So I wanted to really cover off on a couple of different things which are building on some of the comments which have already been made, but also some of the discussion we had last time we met in Durban. So principally, in the first instance, as both the Secretary General and Judi have highlighted, is we now have this technology available, and we're increasingly becoming familiar with it. So we no longer need to have or wait for the formality of annual meetings and make the sometimes very costly and arduous journeys to particular locations within the region. We should embrace this sort of technology, and what I'd like to be able to propose in this meeting is that we try to establish and invigorate the business forum through the technology, and holding meetings possibly, say, quarterly, something like that on a regular frequency, so that we do get to know each other. We become much more familiar with each other and can try to push forward a number of agendas on the work plan. I also wanted to congratulate, I didn't have the opportunity because I was battling the technology for a while, but Sunil Boodhoo, his presentation was wonderful in hearing the progress which the governments are trying to make in understanding what can be progressed in terms of trade facilitation, benchmarking each other, etc., support for the trade facilitation agreement implementation, etc. These are all calls that the business community have made to the governments through the business forum. So it's great to see this connectivity starting to occur, and if we can have it, and make it more tangible through the use of Zoom calls or similar technology, then I, for one, would be happy to host such a thing if that's useful, or I'm sure Your Excellency, the UAE would through your chairmanship, like to take a leadership role, or of course, encourage anybody. And then intersessionally, perhaps we could establish working groups that might work on particular focused areas, and then maybe those groups could meet intersessionally in between the regular groups. But I just like to put that out there, but I make that suggestion is let's while we've all been confined because of the coronavirus and we'd really rather not have it, let's look at the upside and embrace, you know, what this has brought for us as well, so that we move on. So that's my first point. My second point is that at the last meeting, I made the proposal that we need to engage, as Judi has said already in her address, the business community. Now, the call was also in Sunil's presentation, I think, or perhaps the Secretary General's, of linking the Chambers of Commerce together. Now, I suggested last year that the International Chamber of Commerce, and you'll see the logos above my head on my slide here, the International Chamber of Commerce already exists and already has national committees and already has the World Chambers Federation within it, so that we have these structures already. And through the year, while I was supposed to have written a concept note, which I've failed to do, unfortunately, for the moment, but what I did encourage and facilitate was that the Secretariat, through Mark Libsey, was able to visit Paris and to visit the ICC and a number of other bodies and have conversations with them. And I have kept that up myself, and I was even today in touch with ICC Secretary General John Denton, who has a planning meeting apparently internally this week to try and progress some of these things, because the ICC is working on the global agendas at the UN, at the WTO, etc. And we can bring those things down to our more regional approaches. And of course, as Judi will remind me, not all of the business organizations are chambers of commerce. So of course, we should welcome, you know, any groups that want to come in. But my point is really, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's build on the structures that already exist within our region. And I know, Excellency, you have a strong connection with ICC and the Chambers Network within your region. And of course, your countryman chairs, in fact, World Chamber Federation. So we should be able to build on these things and then take that forward into Bangladesh. And when I was in Bangladesh last year, we made good progress with the Chamber of Commerce there in making sure that they understood what the opportunity was in their own host and vice chairmanship to support you. So that's my second proposal, is I've been working on it and I think it's positive, but I seek the support of the group for continuation. My third point to make here is related to the work plan and trade modernisation. And again, I was very heartened to hear Sunil's presentation around all of the different things which were going on to progress trade and investment within the region from the government side. So that's really fantastic. My proposition is, though, the government should not do that in isolation. It should come to the business community to hear and welcome the views from the business community of how they're practically seeing each of the aspects that the governments are working on. So let's join these things together so that we're all working together as a team, so that we get better outcomes for everybody and not an isolated pocket of activity on the government side and a different set of activity from the business side. Let's bring those two things together so that we can do it. My fourth point is around travel restart. I'm not certain what the coronavirus status of all of the member states are, some suffering more than others, of course. Australia has closed borders for the time being as well, and many nations do. But we have, through the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, built and made suggestions to the government and put a lot of pressure on around reopening the border, firstly with New Zealand, who is coronavirus free. And so that makes some sense to do that. But what we're really doing was establishing a protocol of how Australia would work with the rest of the world. And we know that the ASEAN nations have been working on opening up, particularly to the business community, using the APEC business travel card potentially, or other pre-qualification processes, so that the business community can get back to business. And of course, secondarily to that is the airlines need to be able to fly. So we need to have the open skies policies to make sure that will happen. So that's my appeal, is that it's one of the things for this year's work plan, of course, needs to be how do we restart, how do we support each other in that restart of our international engagement, and getting the people back together for business, and of course the importance of tourists and students coming from each of our nations and sharing those experiences are all part of that richness that we need to pursue. And the support for that, again, we can draw upon things like the International Chamber of Commerce has been doing, but others, of course, in tracking devices and using technology to facilitate the ability to move so that healthy people are able to be tracked and monitored, can come and go, and the certainty that enables us to move around in much the same way. They've built a thing called the AOK Pass for those who know about it in the network. But there are others. I'm only telling you that it exists, and trying to support it. They've used the yellow fever style of reporting process, where that was obviously a historic card. Now use the technology. These things are being built into apps so that you can do it. So we should embrace that sort of technology and assist us all to get back to business. So that's where I'd like to end, but I'm happy to have any discussions on it, and I commend those items for the consideration of the group.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for this wonderful presentation and knowledge that you mentioned about the ICC. And as you mentioned, Your Excellency, we have already a very good connection with we have His Excellency Hamad Bouamim chairing the World Chambers. I myself chair the ICC UAE. So this, when I mention our collaboration with Bangladesh, I know this from first hand. I signed the paper, I know that. I also agree with Your Excellency when you mentioned about meeting now. We could use although we don't meet in person, but we could meet more often because of the technology. For example, now we are working like few months or something, we sometimes have 4 or 5 meetings day and night, anywhere, in the car, on the road, in the restaurant, wherever, just in a hotel. You take a small place and you plug in and you finish your meeting. So let's use this technology. Let's use this advantage while we are doing our best to get over this pandemic. Everybody in the world is doing their best, and we are hopeful, inshallah, that things will get better soon. Other thing you mentioned about the private sector and the private sector entities, they should let people know and let the whole world know about what they are doing, what they are capable of doing, what their tasks. Because sometimes it's a matter. I've been in the 22 years in the chambers and private sector, and I think it's a matter of awareness, Your Excellency. Sometimes people or even officials are not aware of exactly what is the private sector entity, whether it's chamber, whether it's a private company is capable, or what's the task they should take. Most of the government, many government are they understand this role, and they're always asking the private sectors, and they're working hands in hands to develop either each country or a country or the whole region. So by doing this collaboration between the private sector, of the private sector, the leaders of the private sectors, helping their countries and helping the region, I think we should not forget educating people and have more awareness to everybody that what the private sector is capable of doing. I agree with you 100%. Looking forward to see you in person and see more of you either in person or also before we do that on conferences. And Ladies and gentlemen, always ladies first. So that's what we say. We move to the last item on the list before concluding and adopting the decision report of the meeting. You are welcome to raise any notes, recommendation, or whatever question, initiatives to strengthen our cooperation and to take it in consideration. Please, Your Excellency. Yes, please, Your Excellency. Yes. Okay. Please, the floor is yours.
I don't know who is going to go first, but
You are always first, don't worry.
Oh, no. Brian, thank you so much for your excellent contribution, and through you, Chair, I think, and now I speak as an African, and the SMME space and the informal settlement space. And as most people on this call who know me will know, that I've always talked and motivated for the sectors that are aligned and akin to an ocean. So whether it's fishing or whether it's the agri-processing around fishing and then moving inland. So I really think now that the world will work more online and virtually, we should look for an opportunity amongst either the member states or our dialogue partners to do some really good capacity building and development in the SMME space and women in that space to be able to trade online. So that would be my one urgent appeal, is to level the playing field as we move into greater connectivity, moving into a 5G world. How do we take our communities that dot the Indian Ocean along with us? And then, of course, just to remind everyone that in January, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement kicks in. So we should look at all the free trade agreements within, and maybe here, Professor Draper, I assume you are the professor now, or Peter Draper, is to look at how we can do a major work session around looking at the harmonization of all the free trade agreements and look at points of commonality and synergies. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other question or any other? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take much time. It's Mark Livesey in the Secretariat here. Just for anyone that doesn't know, Judy's already referred to it, and Brian, we here in the IORA Secretariat based in Mauritius are the support for this business forum, and we do what we can. It's a pleasure of mine personally to support the activities and to bring the group together. But Judy's right to point out that the forum will continue at a fairly modest pace without additional resources. We are a intergovernmental secretariat here. I'm a government official myself, and so we are bound by the rules and processes that you all well know associated with that. One of the proposals that I've made to the previous business forum, and it's an observation now for your consideration, is just to think about where additional resources might come from and what they might do to take some of these actions forward. They could be located here in the Secretariat, or they could be in any one of the member chambers of commerce and industry, for example, that are on the line now. That's going to be critical should this business forum elevate to the next level, I would say, to function at the level of business forum in other organizations, for example, the APEC, Business Advisory Council, ASEAN, SADC, and COMESA, and there are many other examples. I'm very happy to help conceptualize that, but that's really for the business forum delegates to lead with us here in the Secretariat in a supporting role. And two other brief observations, just to echo what Brian has mentioned and yourself, Chair. the ICC leadership in Paris was very interested in the Indian Ocean Marine Business Forum. They've got a clear strategy to engage more in Africa and the Indian Ocean. And John Denton himself said, please let me know how the ICC can work with IORA. So I think that I'm looking forward to seeing some tangible cooperation.
Okay, please.
I'm from Mauritius. I'm Faiza Ibrahim from the Mauritius Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we hear you fine.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all these, insights you shared, that you all shared to promote business. But that's very interesting to hear about. But I would like to suggest one thing in that last year I recalled that there was a proposal of setting up a permanent secretariat. Chair, you mentioned about the sharing of information because business people need to know what the other one is doing, what the other country is doing, what the other country is producing. So it's very important that we are aware, each business man is aware of what the other is doing. So we need to have a coordinating body. Let's call it a platform, a permanent body. So we should think about it. I know it in terms of resources, in terms of financial resources, it can cost. But we should think of something, a coordinating body, which will link all chambers of commerce together and share all the information and share all issues, and we can act as one private sector body within the IORA. I think this is something which is missing somewhere. I think Brian mentioned it about the collaboration between chambers of commerce, etc. But we should find means, and we should discuss, of course, how we can proceed to have a coordinating body for the private sector at the IORBF. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Malaysia has something to would like to say something. Thank you for Mauritius. Mauritius is a very beautiful country. I've been there twice, and I'm always looking forward to go and spend some time with the family.
Please visit the country anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Malaysia.
Good evening,
yes.
Excellency.
Yes.
It was an excellent presentation. I actually followed from much earlier. And just a quick take on the role that Malaysia has played, because I have also had the pleasure of attending the conference, the IORA meeting in Delhi in 2017, early parts of 2017. And one small observation, Excellency, is I think many of the member states have a lot of experience in very niche areas. It's like for Malaysia, we have a very good experience of institutional support towards MSMEs. And this institutional supports of MSMEs has actually made progress over the last 10 years. If you say our numbers, we have actually moved from like early 20s to now closer to 40% of our GDP actually comes from there. So I'm sure Malaysia and the National Chamber of Commerce, which I represent in this meeting, would be able to share a lot of this institutional support that we have done and has made a lot of these changes. And we'll be glad to actually share it across our member nations so that we also all can benefit from it. And also, I think it is also very apt that we also look at the digital economy. I think many of the speakers and comments were actually made towards that end, to actually have digital economy become the pivot of any of the changes that we institutionalize, both in our IORA platform and also across all other collaborative platforms. And anyway, thank you and an excellent job towards the incoming chair. And if there is any support, we will gladly extend it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, by the way, the ambassador there is one of my friends for a long time, Mr. Khalid Al Ghaib in Malaysia. So yes, if you get to meet him, you know, he's a nice guy, very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's another comment or something. Korea.
Good afternoon, all. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine. Thank you.
My name is Kwon Jae Lee from Korea International Trade Association. First of all, thank you, Your Excellencies and inviters from other organizations for fruitful discussions in this IORA Business Forum. Actually, we, along with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Korea, would like to briefly comment and promote about the IORA seminar scheduled to be held on October 29th. The topics would be related to IORA's priority areas such as blue economy and trade and investment facilitation. So please feel free to join this IORA seminar and participate live if you're available at that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments, please? Yes, Australia. Please.
Thanks, Excellency. I neglected in my presentation opportunity to also point out that I have commenced some conversations. We had some earlier suggestions. I think Mauritius may have made it, or India in earlier times, around needing to promote more events within the region. And I've always been somewhat skeptical of that because there are plenty within the region. But what I've done is approached GTR. I don't know how many of you know GTR, but they are a London-based but global events coordinator, primarily focused on the trade and financial industries. They conduct them regularly across Asia, the Middle East, Africa, as well as into Europe. So dialogue partner connectivity as well. And I've not got very far, and I'm trying to introduce them to the Secretariat with Mark and have a conversation. But we recently partnered with them in their virtual trade events, and we've opened up a discussion with them to see whether or not they could also partner with IORA, so that we get the opportunity to leverage their events, much the same as we congratulate UAE on leveraging the AIM annual investment meeting, which we'd encouraged in the past as well. So again, not to create new events, but to leverage the events which are going on, which align with our interests, and then insert potentially speakers, be they ministers from IORA, be they business people from IORA, and have the themes that are important to IORA built into those. So again, I'm very happy to update you on those things. It's very embryonic, but I wanted to alert the meeting that I'd taken that initiative, and hopefully others will support that too.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, again, and I'm glad you mentioned AIM. I think it's a very important. Thank you. I think it's a very important event, and we invite and extend a warm invitation for everybody to join this and benefit from the 3 days ongoing event. Thank you again. Any other comment or question? Okay. Control, is there anything I don't see or anything?
No, Mr. Chair, we don't have any raised hands.
Okay. Now then, I would like to request IORA Secretariat to screen the decision report, please.
Mr. Mark from the IORA Secretariat.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Fahad. I'm just working out how to share the document.
You will be seeing a green button, share screen. Yes, I think you can see your screen now.
Okay, thank you so much. Chair, this document is about 3 pages long. The tradition in IORA to ensure that we've captured people's interventions in a timely fashion is to screen it now. If we have 5 or 10 minutes, I would encourage we go through item by item just to make sure that the delegates understand the report and make sure anything that's not captured, it can be captured right now. Chair, would you like me to proceed item by item to do so?
I think it's up to you. It's up to the ladies and gentlemen, but I think it's the best. So if anybody missed out on something or did not have his comment or his concern is there, I think it's better to do that. Next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll proceed. Item 1, the Chair and IORA Secretary General welcoming delegates and observers. I won't read out word for word unless there's a request to do so. For item 2, I don't think we need to discuss that. For item 3, I've tried to capture Ms. Nokwe and Mr. Boodhoo's interventions here. Ms. Nokwe reported on the IORBF's achievements in the past 2 years, including the potential for the IORBF to link business and government, achievements including the Durban Conference, Mitsui delegation engagement, roundtables with member states and dialogue partners in Pretoria, and establishing excellent working relationships through workshops and teleconferences. She highlighted challenges facing the forum, including the need to allocate dedicated resources, the need for longer term planning and scheduling of IORBF meetings, regular joint sessions of business and government in IORA, and activating an effective leadership troika of IORBF delegates. For those who don't know, the current IORA troika is the UAE as chair, South Africa as past chair, and Bangladesh as incoming chair. 2 key opportunities highlighted by Ms. Nokwe were that the IORBF can focus on for the future include promotion of small and medium enterprises through implementation of IORA's SME MOU, and empowerment of women as business and economic leaders. Mr. Boodhoo reported that since January, a number of initiatives have been taken forward, including consideration of a framework trade agreement, an NTB reporting mechanism, full implementation of the trade repository website that is currently under construction in IORA, a program to support implementation of the WTO trade facilitation agreement, creation of a network of trade and investment promotion agencies, a study on key maritime infrastructure bottlenecks, commissioning a study on the investment environment in the region, and establishing stronger dispute resolution facilities that are specific to the Indian Ocean region. And like Ms. Nokwe, Mr. Boodhoo placed an emphasis on dialogue between government and business, and noted that his report presented an update to the business community from government in that regard. I won't read word for word item 4 on Professor Draper's intervention. I've taken some of his highlights from his slides, and we will, in our report that is issued to all delegates and member states, we will include those slides and the slides of all presenters, unless presenters indicate that they do not wish us to do so. On item 5, for Mr. Azad, his presentation on Bangladesh, he noted some aspects of the trade investment situation for Bangladesh and some specific proposals for IORA, including a permanent B2B connectivity platform, exchanging human resources and lessons, visa simplification, and more focus on IORA's dialogue partners. Ms. Hindaluta from the Ministry of the Economy presented on the UAE's competitive trade and investment environment.
May I intervene at this point, or I should go?
Of course.
Azad speaking. I do not have any issue here, but you have written at the last line, I am not a Mrs. It is a gender issue, so I am not Ms. I am Mr. So would you please correct that second line of MS Azad? Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Azad. That is a typo, but thank you for picking it up.
Okay, thank you.
To the focus on the UAE's competitive trade and investment environment presented by the UAE, linkages in terms of goods, services, trade in the Indian Ocean region in oil and non-oil markets, and noted the UAE's high rankings in global indices demonstrating the strength of the UAE's economy and links in the region. The final substantive item is Mr. Brian Clark's presentation on the IORBF in a post-COVID world. Some of Mr. Clark's key points that focused on how the business forum could work differently include hosting regular business forum meetings virtually, perhaps quarterly, taking advantage of new virtual connectivity, setting up subcommittees of interested delegates on specific issues, the IORBF establishing a formal partnership with the International Chamber of Commerce, and focusing on assisting with restarting travel in in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Chair, here I'd like to propose that the meeting agree on several action points to take forward, and I would be grateful for your guidance on if you agree with this approach, and if so, if you agree with allocating tasks to specific actors and timeframes. I'll start with the first proposal with the agreement to, this is my sense, what I'm trying to do is capture the sense of the discussion in this item. And what I've captured it as is the meeting agreed to pursue virtual technology for regular business forum meetings, with the next meeting to be hosted by the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'll pause there and just make sure that that captures accurately everyone's understanding, including yours, Chair. Great. In the absence of any other feedback, I'll move on to the next. The meeting agreed to pursue a formal partnership with the International Chamber of Commerce to extend the Business Forum's network and linkages in member states and dialogue partners. And on this, I would welcome guidance as to who might do this and a time frame.
Well, Mark, I've clearly had some history on it. I'm happy to continue, but much like the earlier item as well, or the one just previously, I'm very happy for His Excellency bin Salem to take a lead on these things as well, given that, and I'm very happy to support him in doing that along with others.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you.
So, Chair, if I understand correctly, I could characterize this, for example, by saying to be led by the IORBF Chair.
All right.
Thank you very much. The next item on restarting travel. The meeting agreed to focus on the issue of restarting travel in the Indian Ocean region as a priority next year. And would the meeting like to task a specific individual or agency with a timeline? And next steps for this item. Failing that, I can move this.
In the absence, Mark, again, so we're obviously trying to do this from Australian perspective. I'd be very surprised if others are not from their own countries as well. So again, I'm happy to have my hand up if you need to allocate, but I'm certain there will be others who can help. And across ASEAN, we've had conversations just recently with the Korean International Trade Association as well. So I'm certain that we would get support from the Korean and ASEAN groupings at least.
Chair Delegates, could I characterize that with the first step being for ACI to have a conversation with the Republic, with KITA and other interested parties? There's no other feedback. I'll move on to the next item. The meeting agreed to focus on empowering small and medium enterprise capacity building and empowerment as a priority in 2021. Would the meeting like to allocate an action person, entity, and timeline?
Can see if I could, Malaysia could help out in that.
Fantastic, thank you, Malaysia. Much appreciated.
Can I have a comment, Mark, please? Chairperson, can I have a comment?
Yes, is it Faiza in Mauritius?
Yes, Faiza from Mauritius. In fact, I would like to reiterate my wish, regarding the setting up of a coordinating body, because I think it's very important to have one coordinating body, whether it is a person or a structure, I don't know, but of course this can be discussed further, but at least to have one coordinating body at private sector level who will liaise with all chambers of commerce, all members of the IORBF at private sector level to coordinate and submit views to the government body. Thank you.
Chair Mauritius, have I accurately?
Well, it's a proposal. I mean, this can be discussed afterwards. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's okay, but at least there should be this private sector, this coordinating body at private sector level.
Okay, thank you, Faiza.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments on that item, then the final item for our report is highlighted on screen now. The meeting agreed to consider a further partnership with the London-based Global Trade Review to leverage existing events to highlight Indian Ocean specific trade and investment opportunities. Mr. Clark, if I could be so bold, given that you've proposed it and have started some discussions, could I allocate Aki to take that forward?
Certainly.
Chair, that concludes the review of the decision report.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. I think everybody now is chipped in and have their saying. We'll always listen to everybody and would appreciate the previous experiences and the cumulative experiences over the years. That's something we really need to have a base so we can have new initiatives in the future. Before I conclude, I would like to say that the United Arab Emirates will continue to work closely with the member states and dialogue partners to foster cooperation and coordination between the member. In conclude, I would like to thank you so much. Thank everybody for participation and for so much information. Since this is my first meeting with you, so I apologize if I forgot somebody or you know, we are. I think next meetings we'll have more closely with and more familiar with names and with everything else. If there's anybody wants to say something before conclude, that's you know, they are more than welcome. If not, I would like to conclude this and thanking you all again for a great meeting, long meeting over 2 hours 20 minutes, but it is very fruitful, and I myself learned a lot from all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.